Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today. Before we get started, I would like to remind everyone of the following. Each participant has been muted on entry and will remain on mute throughout the webinar. However, if you have any questions throughout this presentation, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. We will have time to address any questions at the end of the webinar. While we will review the chat, our primary focus will be on the Q&A portion pod. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded. The recording, along with a copy of the slides, will be posted to the OCS CSBG webinars page, found through a link which will be posted in the chat.
Thank you, Nikki. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on your time zone. My name is Manette Galindo, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Policy Data and Evaluation Branch Chief here in the Division of Community Assistance within the Office of Community Services, where we administer the Community Services Block Grant. Thank you for joining us today for the fiscal year 2023 CSBG Annual Report webinar series, where today we'll cover modules 2 through 4. Next slide, please. Next slide. Today, you'll hear from some of the members of the Policy Data and Evaluation Branch, as well as our partners at the NASCAS partner organization. Charles Shear, our statistician, will facilitate today's webinar. You'll hear from Lena Kotin-Chan, our data analyst, Kayla Lennon, our community services program specialist, Tiffany Jarvis, who serves as a senior analyst with NASCAS, and Muska Cameron, the director of research for NASCAS. Next slide. Now going to turn it over to our facilitator, statistician with the Office of Community Services and Division of Community Assistance, Charles Shear, to cover the overview for today. Charles. And Charles, you may be on mute.
Thank you, Manette. So today, in general, we're going to be talking about reporting requirements, an overall of a review of the reporting requirements, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Kayla. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. As mentioned earlier, first we will discuss reporting requirements and why we report. Some of this should serve as a refresher if you were able to attend some of our earlier webinars this year or even the one we had yesterday. But of course, we want to make sure that we review them again. Here we are, on screen is the Act. The CSBG Act section 678E outlines the requirements of the CSBG Act, including the requirement to submit annually and provide a measured performance of the state, or sections B, D, G, H, and I, an account of expenditures of funds, including administrative cost, or section E, and a description of training and technical assistance offered by the state, or section F. We can move to the next slide. The fiscal year 2023 CSBG annual report is due on March 31st, 2024. Please note that since March 31st falls on a Sunday, OCS will observe Monday, April 1st at 11:50 p.m. ET as the adjusted due date for the annual report through the Online Data Collection System, or OLDC. To ensure a complete submission, states are expected to submit CSBG regular annual report and CARES annual report together. Grant recipients should already be familiar with the integrated strategy OCS is using to collect the information for the annual report. However, we do understand that there are some new administrators and that this may be their first time. So we do suggest that you refer to our CSBG Acts and Transmittal 2401, the submission of the fiscal year 2023 CSBG annual report. Please don't hesitate to reach out to your evaluation and program specialist if you have any questions or need help. And we will provide the contact information at the end of this webinar. We can move to the next slide. This timeline may look familiar to you. As we discuss additional targeted TTA, there are dedicated webinars to unpack each of these critical steps. Today's webinar is focused on submitting the data to OCS. We can move to the next slide. During this year's submission, we realized that there may have been some confusion about how to complete your submission for modules 2 and 4. If we do not receive a complete submission, there will be delays in the release of the future SMART forms and the federal review. Therefore, we want to make sure that we provide some specific guidance. A complete submission of modules 2 and 4 includes uploading all XMLs for all reporting eligible entities. This means that all XMLs must be uploaded successfully and saved. And lastly, include any comments that may provide additional clarity to your data. We'll discuss this more in detail in the December 14th webinar, and we can hit the next slide twice. Additionally, in completing your submissions, OCS requests that you upload blank XMLs for all eligible entities that are included in your CSBG state plan, CARE state plan, and for regular CSBG, the entity must report if they were de-designated after the start of fiscal year 2021. This is a new requirement. As in last year, if the eligible entity did not expend any CARES or if they declined funds, you must still upload a blank XML for those modules. Again, after you have uploaded all XMLs, please remember to submit the state level form. And we can hit this next slide twice. We understand that there may have been some agencies that expended all funds in fiscal year 2022. If so, please update Module 2 8.6 confirming that all funds were expended in fiscal year 2022. And please be sure to upload a blank Module 4. We can go to the next slide. And I'll now turn it over to my colleague Lena to do an overview of Module 2.
Thank you, Kayla. And Charles, you can hit the next. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Module 2 is the way to communicate information on how resources were allocated for each eligible entity. In regular CSBG annual report, eligible entities report expenditures, capacity, and resources for all CSBG funds and include CARES in all those sections. And in CSBG CARES annual report, eligible entities will report using a simplified version of Module 2, focused on expenditures and resources of CSBG CARES supplemental funds. CARES report only includes Section A and C. Next slide. As far as eligible entity reporting period, we'll leave it up to the grant recipient to decide which reporting period to choose, state fiscal year, the federal fiscal year, or the calendar year. Module 2 is completed by eligible entities, and that's for regular CSBG and CARES if applicable. One thing that I want to emphasize again, Charles, you can click one more time, is that regular CSBG includes 3 sections, A, B, and C, but CARES only includes sections A and C. And do not forget that regular CSBG includes information for both CSBG and CARES, if you're one of the states that is still reporting on CARES. Next slide. So now some things to consider when completing Module 2 for both CSBG and CARES. We're asking you to capture how CSBG leverages all the different types of activities. And we're asking all eligible entities to really understand if work that is being done better fits in any other domains, so that all expenditure domains tell a more precise and detailed story. For Section B, remember to report across all programs, reporting on volunteer hours, support by board members, partnerships, and certifications. And lastly, for Section C, report all available resources that contribute to the outcomes, services, and people served that are reported in Module 4. This is where you report all resources that are allocated, and then in Module 4, you'll be able to report all outcomes that were achieved with availability of those resources. So now I will turn it over to our partners at NASCASP to do the deep dive into Module 2.
Thank you, Lena, and hello, everybody. Tiffany and I are going to do a dive into some things to be mindful of as you complete Module 2. As Lena just so wonderfully walked us through, there are 3 sections to Module 2, and I'm going to go into Section A, which is where you report your expenditures. So starting right from the top in Module 2, Section A, there is A.1, which is where the eligible entity has to select the reporting period for each agency. As Lena mentioned, the grant recipient, which in this case is the state grantee, gets to choose what the reporting period is for their entire state. So as an eligible entity completes their Module 2, you have to select the correct checkbox, but that checkbox has to be the same for every eligible entity within the state. Your state should be informing you what the reporting period is for the entire state. So it shouldn't be it shouldn't be up to the eligible entity to select that. You should already know what the correct reporting period is. For states, as you receive Module 2 back from your agencies, please ensure that all the agencies within your state are selecting the same correct reporting period. It might seem very minor, right? It could just be a user error, accidentally selected the wrong checkbox. They meant to select October, they selected June, and it might just be a user error that needs to be corrected. But the reason it matters is because anytime a report is being submitted, you always want to be mindful of the story that that is telling, right? So when a different reporting period is selected, what that suggests is that all of the data being reported henceforth is going to be for a different timeline, right? So that's why even minor things like this very basic checkbox is important to make sure that we are being as accurate about the story and the data that we are reporting. So just some tips for preparing for success. If we could move on to the next slide. For states, when you are preparing for data collection, whether that is at the beginning of the reporting period, whether that is at the point that you receive the smart forms, please make sure to remind your eligible entities what the correct reporting period is that they should all be selecting within their state. Okay, moving on to the next part of section A, we have table 8.2, which is where eligible entities report their CSBG expenditures. So this is for the regular module 2, which means all of your CSBG expenditures are reported here, whether it's CARES, whether it's regular. If it was a CSBG dollar, it gets reported here, and you classify your expenditures into the domains that we have listed in that table, which of course are the 6 main domains we have: employment, education, income, housing, health, and civic engagement, and then some other selections as well there. There has been a new validation that we started implementing last year. So if an agency is reporting CSBG expenditures under a specific domain, we will be checking the services for that domain as well to make sure that that it wasn't inadvertently left blank, just making sure that folks are completing the report as accurately as possible. So just as an example, let's take a look at employment here. This agency reported $100,000 under employment, but then when we look at the employment services, there are no services reported under employment. We're going to ask the question just to do the due diligence and make sure that the employment services weren't inadvertently left blank. There might be any number of reasons, right, why an agency has expenditures under employment, but not necessarily tied to a specific service. That is fine. If you do see a flag about that in your in the review memos that you get once you've submitted the report, just be sure to take a look and explain and confirm that the data is correct. And you can take a look at it on your own from the beginning before you submit your report and provide that explanation beforehand, just so that we know once we receive the data. For CARES, we do check for the services against the expenditure. So we check for the opposite, which is if you have services reported under module 4, but then no associated expenditure, we do flag that as well, but only for the CARES, because for the CARES report, you're reporting on CSBG CARES only services in module 4. So that's just a new validation that you probably already saw in your fiscal year 22 memos, and we are going to be continuing with that validation there. So just some tips for preparing for success. Moving on to the next slide, please. If you're an eligible entity, review the expenditures data against your module 4 services. If you notice, like the example we just showed, where there might be 0 services, but there's an associated expenditure, you can provide a comment explaining that you've taken a look at the data and that it is in fact correct. For states, you can also do a TNTA webinar, again, at the beginning of the reporting period, or when you pass out the smart forms, at whichever point you decide to do it, just informing agencies about this new validation moving forward and how they can address it. Great, thank you. Then lastly, for section A, I'm just going to highlight the relationship between 8.2i and 8.4. So 8.2i is where the eligible entity would report any CSBG dollars that they spent on agency capacity building. And for agency capacity building, you can always look at the manual for a definition, but if you do report an expenditure under 8.2i, Within section A, there is another question called A.4, which says details on agency capacity building activities funded by CSBG. So we would expect A.4 to be completed if 8.2I has an expense associated with it. If it is not completed, it will be flagged. And then vice versa, if you have completed 8.4, but there are $0 listed under 8.2I, it will also be flagged, and we will be asking whether you meant to complete 8.2I and whether it was accidentally left blank. Just a reminder that 8.4 is only completed if you actually had CSBG dollars that you spent on agency capacity building. If you did a needs assessment and for whatever reason you did not support that with your CSBG dollars, you should not be completing 8.4 and selecting community needs assessment. You only select that when those activities have been supported by CSBG dollars specifically. So again, just be mindful of the relationship between 8.2I and 8.4. In the CARES module 2, we have very similar sections. The numbering is just slightly different. It's CARES 8.3I and then CARES 8.5, but the exact same relationship is expected between the two. So those are just some notes about section A, and I'm sure you are picking up on this theme that we are just trying to be mindful of consistency across the report. Yes, there are different modules and different sections and different parts of the report that might be completed separately, but at the end of the day, it is one report, and we want to make sure that it is telling a story together with each other between all the sections and all the modules there to the best of our ability. And with that, I'm going to pass it on over to Tiffany to walk us through sections B and C.
Okay, thank you. Let us now turn our attention to section B, which captures an agency's capacity building activities. On this side, you see we are calling attention to the relationship between two data points, B3A, which captures all volunteer hours donated, and B3A1, which asks how many of those hours were by individuals with low incomes. So when you're looking at these two together, you will see that B3A can be considered a parent data point, and B3A1 is a child data point, or also referred to as a subset. While in rare circumstances, B3A and B3A1 could be the same number, generally B3A1 will be less than its parent. And if this is not the case, we ask that you please go beyond by reviewing these two data points to make sure you're reporting accurately and that all volunteer hours donated to the agency were only by individuals with low incomes, as the same number would indicate. And if this was in fact the case, you can avoid a possible flag in your quality assurance review memo by submitting a comments memo along with your annual report files to confirm that both data points are correct. However, under no circumstances should B3A be less than B3A1. And if it is, it will be flagged as an error that the agency needs to correct prior to report submission. As we move to the next slide, we also want to call out B4M. This is where you will report other certifications that staff have that are not better captured under B4A to B4L. Under this data point, there are two important things that will be reported. First, you will provide an aggregated number of other certifications that staff have. And in the narrative area below, you will, at a minimum, specify what the certifications are. As the example on the slide shows, you can go beyond and include how many staff have each certification. By doing it this way and aggregating the number to compare against the number reported above is a great way to check your accuracy. To go beyond, the agency can also compare what is reported under the narrative area to modules to instructions to ensure that only certifications are being reported. As we move to the next slide, we are now looking at Module 2, Section C.
I think we just have a slight buffering problem here. So let's pause for a couple seconds.
Tiffany, what we're gonna do is switch the screen share. Looks like we may be having a technical issue. One second. Give us one moment, everyone. We're gonna get a new screen share going. I'm gonna open the slides up. Just give me one moment. Can you see the regular view or the speaker view?
Speaker view.
1 second. How about now?
Still on speaker view.
One moment. Still on speaker view?
Yes.
Click the box for use presenter view.
She was saying take out the check where it says use presenter view. It's underneath the monitor that's automatic.
I do not see that.
You see where use timing is and show media controls. It's to the right of that.
Give me 1 moment. How about now?
We're actually seeing the editing mode and presenter mode.
Go back to what you had and go to display settings. You can change it that way too.
Still editing presenter view.
Go back to the display settings thing.
Display settings at the bottom.
You can try that too, yes. Slideshow. And then go to display settings up top there, the down arrow. And then swap presenter view and slideshow. There you go.
There we go. Thank you. Are we on? Tiffany, is the next slide for you?
Yes,
All
the
right.
next slide. Okay, so now we're looking at Module 2, Section C, which captures resources allocated to the agency. Under this section, there are 2 data points that allow the agency to capture other federal resources not previously reported. C3B12, which is shown on this slide, captures other resources that originate from Health and Human Services, or HHS, that cannot be better reported under C3B1 to C3B11. C3L captures other resources from non-HHS departments that are not better captured under C3A or C3C to 3CK. Both 3CB12 and C3L require 3 items to be reported. First is the description defining what the source is. As shown on this slide, the agency reported that the other HHS funds came from the Family Violence Prevention and Services Act, or FVPSA. Second is the Catalog of Federal Domestic Assistance Number, or the CFDA number. Each federal funding source is assigned a 5-digit CFDA number, which can generally be found in the grants cooperative agreement or through an easy internet search. As you can see by this slide, there is a flag because the agency did not report what FVPCA's CFDA number is. The final piece of information needed is the amount of funds allocated to this agency under the other resource, which in this example on the slide is $19,256. Had the agency included 93.671 under the CFDA number field, it would not have been flagged for correction because all 3 pieces of data would be listed. What is also not evident on this slide is if the CFDA number is not reported in the correct format, an error flag will be received and must be corrected prior to report submission. So when determining what should be included either under C.3B12 or C3L, it is important to make sure that there is no better place to report the agency's allocation. For example, C3A is where the agency reports Department of Energy weatherization funds. In recent years, besides the regular formula allocation, agencies have also received bipartisan infrastructure law or bill funds. Both the regular and bill weatherization allocations fall under the same CFDA number, which is 81.042. As such, the bill funds should be reported under C3A rather than C3L. Other common programs that the agency needs to look carefully at include the Low Income Household Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP, Head Start, and Early Head Start. While the agency may have multiple cooperative agreements from HHS under a specific program, the resources may be coming from the same source and would be best captured elsewhere, such as C3B1, C3B3, or C3B4, rather than C3B12. While also not on this slide, there is an other data point under the State Resources Allocated section, which is C4N. Under this section, 2 items are reported: a description of the source and the amount received. The CFDA number is not applicable to this section because it is only applies to federal resources. As we move to the next slide, please. An agency and the state CSBG office can prepare for success by ensuring that all allocations received, not just what is allocated through the Community Services Block Grant, or CSBG, are reported under Section C. This section helps us tell the story of how the network as a whole leverages additional federal, state, local, and private resources in addition to CSBG to assist individuals with low incomes and the communities in which they reside. Also, by capturing these where they best fit helps ensure that data from one agency can be aggregated with another. Now we're going to be moving to the final slide under Module 2. We are specifically looking at the CSBG CARES report. If you are a small state or one that uses a July 1st to June 30th reporting period, you will have one final CSBG CARES report. And we want to call your attention to a narrative opportunity under Section A. A6 data point provides the agency with the option to report additional information about how CSBG care funds were used during the FY23 reporting period. If you provide information under this data point, please do make sure that it hasn't been previously reported on previous years. Think of this as your last opportunity to highlight the agency CSBG CARES efforts. While this is encouraged but is optional, if the agency did not fully expend its CSBG CARES allocation, A6 must be completed explaining why this was the case. Later in today's presentation, we will be discussing the relationship between CARES Module 2, A2, and C2 data points, and how the agency can use these to determine if its 3-year CSBG CARES allocation was fully expended or not, and if a response under A6 is optional or is required. We are now going to be moving to Module 3, and I'm going to turn it back over to Charles.
Great, thank you, Tiffany. And I apologize to everybody attending for the technical issue. So I'm going to go ahead and briefly touch upon Module 3, Community Level Transformation. Next slide, please. So the Community Level Transformation module, or otherwise known as Module 3, is optional. However, we do highly encourage that you do utilize it and fill it out to the best of your ability. For the regular CSBG annual report, eligible entities would report as normal with new fields to identify CSBG funding sources. And for CSBG CARES, there's no separate form. Rather, there's a drop-down added to the existing form to identify CSBG CARES supplemental as a funding source. And if I could just say again, it is optional, but if you're able to fill it out, that would be useful on our end. However, we would hope that it would be useful on your end to think about what are some ways that we can think about the ways in which CSBG is used and utilized to make higher level changes for the communities that we serve. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go ahead and move into Module 4, individual and family level reporting, and just some notes about the overall structure. Again, regular CSBG annual report, eligible entities will report on outcomes, services, and people served using all CSBG funds. And this includes CARES in all sections. For CSBG CARES supplemental annual report, eligible entities will report using a simplified version of Module 4 focused on just services using CSBG CARES supplemental funds. And therefore, there would only be a Section B for this report. Next slide, please. Similar to what my colleagues have said previously, one thing to think about is just the reporting period as you're filling out Module 4 for both regular CSBG and CARES, if that applies to you. Reporting includes for regular CSBG Module 4, it includes 3 sections. Section A, individual and family national performance indicators, otherwise known as FNPIs. Section B, individual and family services, and Section C, all characteristics report. Whereas with CARES, as I said earlier, just includes a Section B, which is individual and family services. Next slide, please. Things to consider in general for all reports in Module 4. So information reported should be an unduplicated count of people. We very much appreciate the efforts that everyone makes to ensure that there's not missing data. But in addition to that, we also want to make sure that there's not duplicated data. So for NPIs, ensure that column 1, which I'll go over in later slides, includes all people who are working towards the indicator, even if they are not meeting the outcome. Another thing to note is that the services and NPI should tell a story together, not in exclusion of each other. So the data between the two should correlate to some extent. So the information that you find in services and NPIs should match to a certain extent. And here's an example. So if children's ages 0 to 5 are being reported in the education NPIs, there should be some services reported for school children in the services section. FNPI 7A is the unduplicated count of people who obtain one or more outcomes for all of the domains. So this is the summation, right? So if someone only obtained a job, they would be reported in the employment domain and then in FP&I 7A. However, if someone obtained a job and obtained safe housing, so this is the same person obtaining two things, then they would be reported in the employment and housing domain, but only once in FNPI 7A. FNPI 7A should be at least as high as the highest NPI reported for an agency. So in other words, this summation should ultimately be the largest number or match the largest number if among the NPIs. Okay, next slide, please. All right. So in these slides, I'm going to be, I want to highlight particular things that we may have to troubleshoot, or things that would prevent us from troubleshooting. So I'm not going to go necessarily through every single part of Module 4, but just want to highlight some parts that I think are important to note. If you could just continue to hit next slide until all of the visuals appear, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. And just a few more times until we see all the colors. Okay. So for Section 8, Column 2, target, agencies should be setting targets for NPIs and should be reporting out on them in Module 4. We understand that not all NPIs necessarily have concrete targets for them, but we highly encourage that you think about formulating targets. And so targets are basically goals of how many people that we want to serve, and this is based upon maybe our catchment area and our experiences of working in our communities. So we do highly recommend that targets are filled. For Section 8, Column 3, actual results. Column 3, actual results is expected to be lower than Column 1, number of individuals served, because actual results should only be reported for the individuals working toward those results. And if you notice in the boxes, there is notation that tells you how, for example, certain of these numbers are calculated. And I'll be talking about that in more detail in the next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, yeah, thank you. So for Section A, Column 4, percentage achieving outcome, it is Column 3 divided by Column 1, which results in the percentage of those who are achieving outcome. And for Section A, Column 5, performance target accuracy, would be Column 3, actual results divided by Column 2. And so these are two things that we'd want to note as we're filling this out. Next slide, please. Okay. So there's a few, in the next few slides, I'm going to go over a few points of Module 4, where there's auto calculation and where there are things that you'd have to fill out. And just for validation efforts, wanted to highlight those parts. So for Module 4, Section C, individual level characteristics, each total field should sum up the preceding fields. For example, C1E total should be the total sum of C1A, C1B, C1C, and then C1D. Okay. The totals in terms of validation, the totals for individual characteristics should equal the unduplicated number of odd individuals, except for C31, C4A, C5C9, C7E, and C81. So all of these being sections that do not have, which are different in this respect. Thank you. Next slide. So for Module 4, Section C, household level characteristics, each total field should sum up the preceding fields. So for example, D9J total should be the total sum of D9A, D9B, D9C, D9D, D9E, D9F, D9G, D9H, and D9I. From a validation perspective, the totals for household level characteristics should equal the unduplicated number of all households except D14, which is other income source, and D15, non-cash benefits. Next slide, please. And I think there might be a visual, so if you just click next. Yes, thank you. And a few more times, I think, just to see if there's any questions. Yeah, thank you. All right, so in terms of auto calculation, as the reports are unknown, not reported, and totals, the totals for individual characteristics should equal the unduplicated number of odd individuals. The totals for household level characteristics should equal the unduplicated number of all households. And please note that agencies may not collect characteristics for all individuals and households that receive services. These would be reported under unknown, not reported. From a validation perspective, individuals, in terms of the explanation of how this gets broken down in terms of the calculation, individuals or households respectively minus total equals unknown, not reported. Total minus preceding fields equals unknown, not reported. And total will equal individuals or households respectively. So in other words, you just want to make sure that these numbers are calculating correctly and are intuitively making sense. Next slide, please. Age verifications and other alignments. So this is M4CC2 age and M4CC3 education levels. In terms of the M4CC2 age, we provide the ages of all individuals who receive services. We want to add individuals that did not provide their ages under unknown, not reported. You want to make sure that that these are, so this is an example where things should match. So we're looking at M4CC2 and then M4CC3. So here on the left-hand side, the left-hand graphic, we have C and D, which is 14 to 17 age range and 18 to 24 age range. You want to make sure the summation on the left-hand side of those two age ranges also are adding up the same way that you're seeing the age range of ages 14 to 24 are on the right-hand graphic. And then concurrently, or similarly, you want to make sure that ages 25 plus on the left-hand graphic is matching the total that we see on the right-hand graphic of ages 25 plus. Next slide, please. For M4CC2 age and M4CC4 age disconnected use, another example where we want to make sure that totals are, numbers are matching. So on the left-hand graphic, D, 14 to 17, and D, 18 to 24, those numbers should be adding up to be the same number as what we would see on the right-hand graphic. So use youth ages 14 to 24 who are neither working or in school. Next slide, please. For M4CC2 age, and then for M4CC7 military status, we should only be accounting for individuals 18 and plus. So those who would be able to serve in the military or have served in the military. So you want to make sure that those numbers are adding up correctly and match with what we're seeing on military status and its total. Next slide, please. For M4CC2 age, 18 plus, so the age ranges from 18 up until 75 plus, should be total, the total of those age ranges should match the total that we're seeing under M4CC8 with workforce status, which only includes individuals who are 18 plus, as well as those who are unknown and reported, or not reported rather. Next slide, please. So for M4CC5B, health insurance, there's three options. Yes, of the individuals served, how many reported having health insurance? No, of the individuals served, how many reported not having health insurance? And then unknown of the individuals served, how many did not report whether they have health insurance? So when this is taken into account, we want to make sure that the figures are matching with what we want to see under M4CC5C with health insurance sources. Of the individuals that reported that they do have health insurance, yes, what health insurance did they report having? So we want to make sure that the number of people that reported yes on the left-hand side match with what we sum up in terms of the number of people that are reporting health insurance on the right-hand side. And then for the unknown on the left-hand side, M4CC5B should be matching the unknown in M4CC5C. Next slide, please. M4CD13, sources of household income. There's a few categories here. And here, households should only be reporting once. So these are mutually exclusive categories. And these numbers that we see on the left-hand side, for example, other income source, as highlighted in red, should match in terms of total of the numbers that we see for M4CD14, other source income. So the households that reported that they do not have an other source income, what other income sources did they report? No individual other, you could go back to, thank you. So no other individual other income source should exceed sum of D13B, D13C, D13E, and D13F, F, for example. Next slide, please. So for M4CD13, sources of household income, what sources of income did households report? Again, each household should only be reported once. And for non-cash benefits, these figures should match in terms of total with M4CD15, non-cash benefits. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about the subsets that we have in Module 4, and also make the distinction between those that are auto-calculated and not auto-calculated. So I'll go ahead and further explain what is being noted here under the bullet points in the forthcoming slides. Next slide, please. So for subsets, for M4 section A, SNPI2C, the parent row is read only. So as Tiffany had described earlier, the parent row is a higher level row, and then what you would refer to as the subsets or the child rows are the ones that are after that immediately. So for in this case, SNPI2C, the number of children and youth who demonstrated improved positive outcomes toward learning, including improved attention skills, would be the parent row. And what we want to take note of is that for age verification, 2C1 should not exceed Module 4, Section C, C2A, ages 0 to 5. So we want to make sure that these two are matching. So whatever you have under these categories, again, should be matching with where the arrow is pointing in the figure. Next slide, please. So similar with SNPI2D, you see that the parent row in the blue is read only, and where the arrow is pointing in the figure, so this is indicating T2DI should not exceed Module 4. Section C, C2A, ages 0 to 5. Next slide, please. For M4 Section A, SNPI 5A, 5I1 should not exceed Module 4, Section C, C.2A, ages 14 to 17, as denoted by the orange arrow. And 512 should not exceed Module 4, Section C, C2A, ages 18 plus, as denoted by the red or burgundy arrow. Next slide, please. For SNPI 1H, please do note that the parent row is editable. So whereas in the previous slides they were auto-calculated, the rows here are editable. So you want to make sure from a validation perspective that 1H.1, 1H.2, 1H.3 are not exceeding 1H, again, the parent row. Next slide, please. For SNPI 6A, similar situation. So from a validation perspective, 6A1, 6A2, 6A3 must not exceed 6A, the parent row. Next slide, please. And in this slide, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to NASCAS to further explain Module 4, all characteristics, report items E and F.
Thanks, Charles. So just as you saw through that walkthrough of Module 4, there are lots of relationships between different data points, between different sections of the report. And so, of course, like I said earlier, consistency is the theme. That being said, we do recognize that there are lots of data interoperability issues at local agencies that might make it difficult to always be consistent. And we certainly do recognize those issues. To the best of your ability, right, we try to, we ask that you try to address those interoperability issues, but we know that that isn't necessarily possible in all instances. So For those reasons, we have items E and F in the all characteristics report, which is the last section of module 4. That is where you are reporting all of those demographic details that Charles walked us through. And at the end of that demographic report, you will see items E and F. So when you are completing the demographic section, you are completing specifically for the individuals and households that you have an unduplicated count of, right? Which means they're only being counted once. If you cannot unduplicate certain programs from your overall demographic data, please report them in items E and F of the all characteristics report. So let's walk through an example. Let's say you might have unduplicated data for 100 children ages 0 to 5 that were served in various programs across your agency, right? So you know for a fact you have data, unduplicated data for 100 children ages 0 to 5, but your Head Start program was not included in the demographic counts because you were unable to unduplicate your Head Start database from the rest of your programs, right? So you couldn't tell, if that 100 children included some kiddos from your Head Start or didn't include some kiddos from your Head Start because you couldn't add your Head Start database to the demographic data that you had for those 100 children and still get an unduplicated count. If so, just write your Head Start down under program name in item E and tell us how many individuals were served there. What that tells us is that you reported the information above in the demographics for the people that you had it for, that you were able to unduplicate. But down here, you're telling us, and here are some programs that we were unable to unduplicate. And that's just useful information for us as we look at the rest of your report. As you're completing items E and F, please don't use acronyms, again, because we might not necessarily know what that acronym stands for. And it's just useful to us to spell out what the program is so we can understand what you are reporting it for. And so with that, I guess I'm slated to speak here for section B. In the notes here, so I'll go into it. So in section B of module 4, the regular CSBG annual report, eligible entities should include information on services and activities supported with all of your funds, with all of your CSBG funds. And then in the CARES annual report for module 4 there, you are only reporting on services and activities supported with your CSBG CARES funds only. So keep that in mind if you are still completing a CARES report. And with that, I'm going to pass it on over to OCS to walk us through the CARES report.
Thank you so much, Muska and Charles, for going over module 4. I know it's a lot of information, but we're almost there. So thank you one more time. And now I will discuss CARES annual report specifically. Next slide, please. So the next 2 slides should look familiar, as my colleague Monique and I presented this issue during the Q4 calls. And as a brief reminder, during the Federal Quality Assurance Review, we found that there was a reporting discrepancy specific to CSBG CARES, and more specifically, the numbers reported in 8.2 and C.2 did not match for majority of CSBG network. The issue was that CSBG eligible entities were also reporting that they were spending more than they were allocated. And that happened because some of them were awarded additional discretionary funds, or they were using some of the admin funds that the states could allocate. And that presented the issue for the congressional report. Next slide. So as you remember, we mitigated this issue by sending out the CSBG CARES allocation expenditures report in the Excel format, and you provided total allocations amount, CSBG CARES discretionary amount, if any, and CSBG CARES expenditures. So next, I will discuss how you can use this form or that report to accurately report 8.2 and C2 in fiscal year 2023 CARES reporting. Next slide. Just a reminder that 8.2 and C.2 are not the same data points, and 8.2 matches the allocation as noted by the state in Module 1, Section E, and it should not change from year to year. And C.2 includes discretionary and carryover. Again, 8.2 is only for supplemental. That was that new data point that was included in the supplemental CARES report, but C.2 is included in all the reports, and C.2 should include carryover and discretionary across all the reports, CSBG and CARES. Next slide. So there's going to be a lot of information, a lot of calculation, a lot of numbers, so please bear with me. And of course, you will receive those slides after presentation, and you'll be able to go back and kind of look over those calculations again. So here we go. This Excel spreadsheet should look familiar to you. The only difference is that we added fiscal year 2023 columns for CSBG CARES discretionary amount, that column G that is highlighted, and CSBG CARES expenditures in column L that is highlighted, right? So when you filled out this report, you did not have those columns. The cutoff was fiscal year 2022. Now we're trying to kind of tie it back together, your CARES report to this Excel spreadsheet. So you will need to know the amounts that go into those cells, the highlighted cells for fiscal year 2023, to accurately report in CSBG CARES. So I will show how this spreadsheet correlates with the CSBG annual report in the next few slides, but 2 notes here. At this time, OCS does not ask you to submit the revised spreadsheet. It was only done to mitigate the reporting discrepancy and ensure timely report to Congress during the last reporting period. However, we really encourage you to use this for your own calculations during this reporting period to make it easier to enter the accurate information in CSBG CARES report. And we hope that we don't have to come back to this Excel spreadsheet because we value your time. And the examples here, the examples that you see on the slide and you will see on the next few slides, they do not represent any eligible entity and are used just for demonstration purposes only. Next slide. Okay, so item A2 in module 2 of the CSBG CARES annual report correlates with the total CSBG CARES allocation amount. Column C, you can see that it's highlighted on the slide. Note that the amount in 8.2 does not include discretionary funding, right? So for eligible entity 1, you would report 8.2 of the CARES report as $20,000. And for eligible entity number 2, you would report 8.2 for $30,000. So this is kind of like the correlation. So you can, I hope that Excel spreadsheet was a bit more intuitive so you can use it to kind of fill out the CARES reporting in fiscal year 2023. Next slide. It gets more interesting here. So item 8.3K in module 2 of the CSBG CARES annual report correlates with the CSBG CARES expenditures for fiscal year 2023 in column L, right? So the spreadsheet that you've submitted to OCS does not have that column, right? So if you want to use this spreadsheet for your own calculations, that would be very useful for you because for eligible entity 1, the amount in 8.3K for fiscal year 2023 reporting is $1,000, right? It's just the expenditures that the eligible entities incurred. And for eligible entity 2, the amount reported in 8.3K is $5,000. So one note here that we hope that all entities were able to fully expend their funds, but we understand that they might have some funding left due to various circumstances. So as you saw on the previous slide, total allocation for eligible entity 2 was $30,000. And in this case, eligible entity 2 has some unspent amount. And if you remember, when you're filling out the Excel spreadsheet, again, this kind of data validation that was built in, if it highlights red, then that means that the total award and total expenditures do not match. And again, we understand that some eligible entities can have some unspent amount, but we really hope that it kind of balances out. And we really do hope that expenditures are never exceeding that total award. Next slide. Okay. Now that's where it gets a bit more complicated, but please bear with me. So item C.2 essentially represent funds that are available for eligible entities to expend during the reporting period. So in that Excel spreadsheet that was shown on the slides, there is no C2 because essentially C2 is kind of a calculation. So it will require a bit more math on your side. So formula for C2 depends on whether eligible entities received any discretionary funding or not. So if you're the state that did not give out any discretionary funding, you're up for a treat because it's going to be a bit easier. Next slide. So this table represents the formula to calculate C.2 for each year if no discretionary funding was given to eligible entities. So we are going to focus on, it should say fiscal year 2023 on the last column. So formula will be 8.2 minus all the expenditures. So the logic here, what was allocated to agency in 2020 minus all the expenditures for 3 years, and that's what's left out for them to expend in fiscal year 2023, right? Next slide. So I'm going to kind of circle back to this Excel spreadsheet to demonstrate that. So we're going to focus on eligible entity 2, because if you can see it, I apologize, it's very small. It was kind of hard to fit in the entire spreadsheet onto the slide, but you can see that column D, E, F, and G for eligible entity 2 are blank, or there is no dollar amount, right? So that means that the state did not give out any discretionary funding to eligible entity 2. So in fiscal year 2023, C.2 will equal 8.2 minus all the expenditures, right? So we have 30,000 in column C, that's what was given, minus all the expenditures, column I, J, and K, and we get 6,000, right? 6,000 is what is available for eligible entity to expend in fiscal year 2023. Next slide. So now this table represents the formula to calculate C.2 if the state gave out discretionary funds. And when I said that the states that did not give discretionary, they're up for a treat, now you can really see it because the formula gets a bit more complicated. You can look in the last column that the formula is 8.2 plus all the years of discretionary minus all the expenditures in the last 3 years, right? So we have what was awarded plus fiscal year 2021, 2022, 2023 discretionary, and 2021, 22, 23 discretionary, and minus 2021 and 22 expenditures. And that will be C2, or the amount that is available to spend for eligible entity. Next slide. We're almost there, I promise. So this, I'm circling back again to the spreadsheet to make it more visual. And now we will focus on eligible entity 1, because as you can see in column D, fiscal year 2020, there was $5,000 discretionary. And in column G, in fiscal year 2023, there was $3,000 discretionary, right? So now let's put it back into formula. So we have, we are going to take our allocation amount, we're going to add all years of discretionary, and we're going to subtract 3 years of expenditures, right? So if we follow the formula, we get that C2 equals $1,000. Next slide. So I understand that it was a lot of information, but I hope it was helpful. And again, you will receive the slides and you will be able to review. And of course, OCS is here for any questions that you might have. And with that, I will be turning it to Nikki to discuss available resources that will help you to prepare for fiscal year 2023 CSBG annual report submission.
Thanks so much, Lena. Now we'll go over upcoming webinars and share contact information. Next slide. Our next webinar is on December 6th. This is for the Smart Forms refresher. Then on December 14th, we will close out the annual report webinar series with the OODC training and a technical assistance webinar. Next slide. To ensure that your TA needs are properly addressed, please send assistance requests to your program specialist. For financial operations and monitoring requests, copy your financial analyst. For data collection and performance reporting, including OODC requests, copy your data and evaluation specialist. Please see the DCA staff contact info page, which will be added to the chat for your appropriate contacts. The NASCAS contacts, the dynamic duo that presented today are Tiffany Jarvis and Muska Cameron. We will drop their email addresses in the chat as well. And with that, we will now respond to your questions. If you have a question, please type it in the Q&A pod. I see that we do have questions that have already went there. If I can get the presenters to come back on the screens to reply to the questions that we have received.
And while the questions are being queued up for answer, we did want to share one really great update that OLDC is officially live for the fiscal year 2023 annual report. OCS will be issuing a formal announcement via a Dear Colleague letter along with the Word document for Module 1 that has been requested by states. But you all have it live and in living color, fresh off the press, that OLDC is officially live for the fiscal year 2023 CSBG annual report. And we will put the contacts, the federal program contacts in the chat, as well as the contacts for the NASCAS team.
Great. So the question we have, if our CAAs completed CARES in fiscal year 2022, do we need to upload blank forms for all of them?
For the fiscal year 2023, just as a bit of context for the CARES funding. CARES funding only applies to the 12 small states and those that are in the state fiscal year who have a little bit of reporting left. So yes, if you have expended, you would upload them. Thank you.
The next question, if the grant awarded is for 5 years, and they have the example of Department of Education or BIL, should the entire amount be reported or just a portion of the grant?
So I can jump in here on this one. This one is actually a pretty interesting question that we've been receiving over the years, and I think it might be worth just continuing to consider. What I can say is that when the instruction manuals were created for Module 2, you can feel free to check that out. We did give an example saying that if you do have a multi-year award, you can essentially divide it by the number of years you have and then report what that amount would be per year. So that suggestion has been put out in the instruction manual, but I do think it's an interesting enough question to continue considering. But that is all I can say for now on that. I hope that helps.
I will also add that just because it's a 5-year grant, especially the weatherization bill, not all funds were available each year. So when you're looking at your allocations, you're looking at what is available to be expended. And during the first year of bill, it was 15%. Agencies and states could get up to 15%. I do believe they're now up to 50%. It may have gone past that now, but so that is another way to kind of help identify what you're going to be reporting is when those funds, either in total or a portion, are available that you can actually start expending.
Thank you, Muska and Tiffany. Monique, Nikki, before
Yes.
There are a couple of questions that are related to the slides, the recording as well as the slides. I just want to do one reminder of housekeeping because we answered it a few times. The recording along with the slides will be posted to the CSBG events page, and we'll drop that in the chat. Nikki, I'll answer those here, but I'll send it back to you to cover the rest of the questions for the audio. Thank you.
Okay, sure. The other question, will we receive feedback on fiscal year 2022 Module 3 submissions?
I'm smiling wide. Let me come off, get back on camera. Our efforts are to review module 3 and provide some feedback. I will say that looking at a lot of the module 3 submissions in previous years, our aim is also to continue to work to provide targeted technical training and technical assistance on module 3, not only within the federal office, but across all of our training and technical assistance partners, including NASCAS. But we're going to aim to try to provide some feedback, but also prioritize the training and technical assistance around module 3.
Okay. Someone posted, Mary Needland, what about 14 through 17 individuals who are working?
So, Muska, can you take that one? Because I know often the discrepancies between the counts is what often gets flagged during the quality assurance review.
Sure, I'm not quite clear on maybe what the question is specifically around individuals 14 to 17, but to your point, Manette, yes, there are NPIs that do take a look at individuals 14 through 17. In 5I.1, we take a look at that, and then give me 1 second to confirm something here. Yeah, so 5I.1 calls out individuals 14 through 17 specifically. And so again, like I said, we're going to be looking at consistency across the report. So it would get called out if you're reporting more people under 5I.1 than total youth 14 through 17 that you have in your demographics. And just take a look at that data and confirm that it is correct. And if it's a data interoperability issue, you can put that in that item E that I talked about earlier too. I hope we addressed what the question was, but if you have a follow-up, please feel free to put it in the chat or the Q&A.
I think it might have been related to work status of the indicator that asks for work status of individuals who are 18 plus, and that specifically asked for 18 plus. And the person was asking, what about 14 to 17? If an individual is between 14 and 17, but they're also working, should they be recorded there? I think that's how I interpreted the question.
Thank you, Lena. So work status is specifically for individuals 18 plus, and that is just because we're trying to report back out on the adults, right, and what their employment status is. So if you do have 14 through 17 youth that are working, that is fantastic, but they will not be reported in item 8 in the demographics report.
Okay. So there's a question. If you could clarify what agencies do if they allow participants to select more than one health insurance source. And then we have the question related to that, to check the data for accuracy. If the agency allows participants to select more than one source, unknown, not reported, should not exceed the number of participants selecting yes for having health insurance, correct? That is the only way to validate if they have more than one source.
So health insurance, which on the demographics report is C.5, and then under C.5B, you report how many individuals have health insurance. And then in C.5C, you report the different types of health insurance sources for the people that reported yes. If possible, I'm going to try to share my screen if that's okay, and that might help talk through some of this. So bear with me while I pull that up. Are you guys seeing module 4 on your screen? Can somebody confirm?
Module 4C, yes.
Yes, okay, so let me make that just a little bit bigger here. Woo. Okay, so let's just talk through this example. Let's say this agency, and you can ignore what agency's name is up there. This is fake data I just typed in literally a few minutes ago. So if you're an agency is on this call right now, do not get concerned. This is fake data. Let's say that this agency reported 60 individuals having health insurance under C.5, okay? What they then do is complete this section over here for those 60 people that reported the health insurance. So let's say all 60 of them have Medicaid, for example, right? That is fine because this number is less or equal to the 60 that is being reported. Now, if I type in 70, it's going to be a problem because you said 60 people had health insurance and yet you're reporting more than 60 people in a health insurance source. So it is going to flag. So the way to understand it is that any individual health insurance source here has to be less than or equal to what you reported in yes. But the total down at the bottom can be more than those 60 people because we know people have multiple health insurance sources. So, let's say all 60 people had Medicaid, and I don't think it's possible to also have Medicare, but maybe they also had employment-based health insurance, right? So you can report people in each of the health insurance sources that they have, which means if people have multiple health insurance sources, this total is obviously going to be more than 60 people because they're being counted in multiple different spots. But no individual health insurance source can be more than 60. And that applies from 5C1 all the way down to 5C8 because you are completing each of these individual selections specifically for these 60 people. I hope that that clarified it somewhat.
Looks like we got confirmation and it did, so thank you. Nikki?
Yes. So the next question, wouldn't BIL allocations vary somewhat by state? Not all states may have made 100% available in year one.
And the answer to that is definitely yes. It just really is what is available, and states had flexibility to give that out over multiple years. So if your state has made 100% available, then you would report 100% of allocation. But if your state has only made 50% available for use, then you would only report 60%. So it does vary from state to state.
And
Thank
I'm just
you.
going to follow up on that. For Module 2, Section C, like Tiffany just so beautifully stated, I'm just going to repeat it to underscore it, which is the intent of that section is to report on what you have available to use, right? And I know we're talking about bill, but that applies across the board with all of the other funding sources as well. So there is no hard and fast rule for exactly how it has to be reported, which is the beauty of our CSBG world here in the CSBG report. But just keep in mind what is the intent, which is what you have available to use. And there are different ways to determine that.
Okay, we have a question. Is it possible to have both Medicaid and Medicare?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with the different health insurance sources, so I don't know.
I can confirm yes.
Okay, there you go.
I have a brother who has both sources. He's a disabled adult, and so oftentimes people will have multiple sources.
And we got an answer in the chat as well to us to say yes. So thank you for that.
The official term is dual eligible if someone does have both.
Okay, the next question, we have software that will only count one of the insurance sources and counts nothing if you list more than one. The software is changing soon, but it currently will only allow one insurance source in the count.
I don't necessarily see a problem with that. If that is a policy decision you guys have made at your agency or state to count only the primary health insurance source, if that's how it's set up, but it sounds like it's changing anyways. I don't know, Minette, if there are any hard and fast rules around that data point. I haven't come across any.
No, and for the way that it's reported, that's kind of the angle that I'd be thinking of it, not only in the report to Congress, but at the OCS report or even our performance management. It shouldn't create any issues for us at the federal level with how that's captured, but it seems like the attendee is providing a situational awareness, but appreciate the information. And if you have any other questions, feel free to continue dropping them in the pod, recognizing we have a few more minutes left. We do have a poll. As we've shared in all the previous webinars, our aim is to make this as useful as possible. These webinars happen every year because the annual report is due every year. And your feedback is critical to allow us to update, pivot, and course correct in future years. So while Nikki is getting that ready, we do ask that you just take a few moments to answer this brief 4-question poll. And we want to thank the entire team at NASCAS for joining us today and sharing their expertise, and the Division of Community Assistance staff. And as one final and fun reminder, OLDC is live for fiscal year 2023 reporting. And the formal DCL will be announced shortly, and it will also include the Word document for Module 1 that has been requested by states. Nikki?
I just wanted to jump in to say that we got 3 more questions in as you were speaking.
Okay.
In reference to unknowns and demographics, if the number of unknowns are high, is that something that should flag for further questions when reviewing, or something that agencies should go ahead and document in notes or somewhere else for clarification?
Can you answer this one for me, please?
Yeah, as of right now, we are not flagging and judging, if you will, the level of unknowns that you have. That is just not set up in our review process at this point. That being said, down the line, a few years later, could that be something we are interested in? Who knows? But as of right now, that is not being flagged in the review process. I will say that when we do go out and do TNTA, when states or agencies request us to come out, I actually do show them their demographic data. I show the demographic data for the individuals that they reported in their annual report. And then I show them the census demographic data for people in poverty in their community. And I compare the two just so they can see the story, right? And it's a pretty powerful story to be able to tell, to show, yes, we do serve those that are in need. And one of the things I point out is, well, it's harder to tell our story of who we're serving if we have a high amount of unknowns, right? So for the purposes of telling our story, we do encourage that if you could minimize the unknowns to the best of your ability, but from a review perspective or what's getting flagged, it will not be flagged. We do not look at how high or low that number is now.
Okay, thanks. And could you answer, is insurance reporting for adults only?
No, it is for all individuals that you are reporting as served for that part of the question that says yes, no, or unknown. And then, of course, like I showed earlier, for the specific health insurance, it's specifically for the people that said yes. But for the yes, no, or unknown, it is for all the people that you have served.
Okay, thank you. And Ilana said, okay, good. And the final question we have in the chat is, how would I know if I need to take the December 6th, 11 a.m. Smart Forms refresher from the events page? Is this how everyone submits the forms?
That is a great question. So the smart forms for those states, if you join the regional Q1 calls, we had a brief poll around which states are operating a database. And earlier in the webinar series, we had a specific invite-only webinar for those states to collect their data through either a state-built or a vendor design database. For those states that do not, the smart forms are how we collect the module 2 data that the team has gone over for today. There are some minor changes a lot on the coding end. You may have heard of the UEIs and the DUNS and the action transmittal that was released earlier this summer requesting a revised eligible entity list. There are minor changes. I would advise, even if you're not available, maybe send someone else from your staff. It also gives us an opportunity to learn how to present the information differently. So while you may have heard it, you may be able to provide a perspective that others who are newer to the CSBG network can glean from. And the feedback that we get in these polls at the end is also incredibly helpful. And there's the OLDC refresher that is going to also be in December in a couple of weeks. Recognizing the time, Nikki, I'm going to ask that we pop that poll up just to make sure that we don't commandeer
Yes.
from our recipient. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now stopping the recording.